The world is saved. The living room's dark save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hello, George.
Hello, Mr. Lyons. How are you today, sir?
Other than the surprising bout of near death I was suffering from just as recently as yesterday, I'm otherwise pretty good. How about you?
Pretty good. You know, I am not near death, which I
mean,
always...
we're all approaching death.
Yeah, I mean, as T goes to infinity, death comes for us all. But what do we say to the god of death?
Is it? Oh crap! Is it not today?
It's not today.
Yes.
But
I knew the reference you were making, but I was like, oh man, if I screw this up, I'm gonna have to give up like a nerd point.
Like you just have to sacrifice one of your nerd T-shirts on an altar, you know?
Yeah, I got to take like my Sunrise Robot shirt upstairs and like slash a big hole through the middle
while crying and like playing some sappy song in the background. So
we played Excitebike this time.
Yes, we did.
And I think so. You suggested this game, and it was one of those games that like I'd had deep in the recesses of my mind of like we should eventually play this game, and then I somehow forgot about it completely. And
nice.
This is what happens when you don't write things down, right? Like we have a list of games we might play, and somehow that one didn't make it on there. And then when you said it, I was like, yes, I totally want to play Excitebike.
Yes. No, This game has a weird kind of nostalgia for me, just because like it's one that I remember playing, but I was so young when I played it intensely that I don't remember it too much. All I remember is really the emotion associated with it, which is just pure joy, like just bottled joy, like associated with this game. Where I just remember, all I remember is the act of playing it. Like I couldn't tell you much about it, but I remember the act of playing it and just having a blast. And yeah, so I was just kind of like, because this week we were looking for a more truncated experience, not something that, you know, you could really sink your teeth into, like one with a strong green capped protagonist that I would just, you know, love to get into someday. Nothing like that. So when we were just kind of kicking it around, I was like, what about Excitebike? I think that's kind of a Dr. Mario-esque type of experience, and I certainly don't feel disappointed on that front.
Well, and I'm kind of glad you have a similar weird nostalgia feeling toward this, because I'm only like one more step along memory lane from you, where I remember playing this at friends' houses. Like I know that I didn't have this game,
mm-hmm.
and I know that I was playing this at my friends' houses, but I cannot for the life of me remember who that person was. and worse, because I know I played this when I was like definitely under 10, right? Like
mm-hmm.
I was playing this game, you know, sitting cross-legged like in a neighbor's house, and the more I try to think about it, like the fuzzier it gets, where like I'm now just picturing the bedrooms of like every friend who lived within like a 5-mile radius of my house. Because I'm like, well, they had a Nintendo. Oh, but they had a Nintendo too. Ooh, they had a Nintendo at their mom's house, and I think their mom's house was the one that was closer to me, so maybe I was there. Like, I cannot remember who I played this game with, but I know it was one person. It wasn't like I didn't troll about town, like just playing Excitebike with anybody who handed me a controller. I just can't remember who it was.
Just sitting there, you know, like waiting for a passerby to come by. You'd be like, "Hey, man, you want to play some Excitebike?"
Yeah, just have my leg out on the curb.
Well, now, just to go off on one of our show's signature tangents, let me ask you this.
Are we known for that? This is shocking news to me.
I know, right? Just blown away. Let me ask you this. In your struggle to remember exactly where you were playing it, do you now have semi-concrete, if not concrete, memories of playing it at all of those different places?
Oh, yeah. If nothing else, this confirms to me that the ability to install fake memories in another person I already believe this because I believe the studies and stuff that I've read, but I have now experienced it where you could tell me that I played this at Kevin's house or Brian's house or Justine's house or one of like a dozen other people, and I'd be like, yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
I remember that. Yeah, no, that's to me deeply terrifying just because I do have a very strong memory in college where basically I was like, for sure, I was doing thing A with person A. And then I just followed up with them like years later and be like, hey, remember when we did thing A? And they were like, no, man, I didn't do that. You did that with person B. And then all of a sudden, like the memory floodgates opened. And like it all came crashing back, and like each memory, like you just saw a supercut of me remembering like all of the events with the other person, and then I was just but now I still have a crystal clear memory of both events, just with different people. So, yeah, no, human memory is terrifying. That's why we have to rely on facts and figures, and that's the way I want to start the Excitebike, Excitebike podcast. That seems.
Yeah.
Apropos.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's in a good mood now.
Yep.
They're all optimistic about where this is going. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because now everybody's just sitting there like just everybody who's listening, everything you remember might be fake. So moving on, Excitebike visuals.
I feel like if we ever do some nostalgia goggles for movies, we have to start every single episode like that, except for the one where we watch Total Recall.
Yeah, no, we could totally do some really fun stuff with a Total Recall nostalgia goggles, like with like a nostalgia goggles within a nostalgia goggles. No, what we should do is do the entire nostalgia goggles like we've already done a Total Recall podcast.
There you go.
There it is.
Yeah.
And now we've spoiled it. Or have we?
Maybe we already did it.
Yeah. No, I remember that Total Recall podcast. That was a good podcast.
Yeah. And you can find it at .com, right? Yeah. So this game has graphics, and like every Nintendo game, they have like 5 colors to deal with. And I super respect their ability to make reliable graphics, but I need to just jump straight to a complaint about the visuals.
Go for it.
Did you, at any time while you were playing, did you actually look directly at the audience?
No, because like in the Doctor Who episode where he says every time you see something out of the corner of a mirror, it's the one of the family, right? That he put there. I didn't want to look directly. I think like my brain knew not to look directly at the audience because it's like you don't want to see that, man. Like it's going to be bad. But
it's just, I mean, it's woefully underwhelming because I mean it's just like rectangle body, square head, and then just lather, rinse, repeat 1,000 times across the entire back of the screen. So I mean, you're not supposed to be looking up there. You're supposed to be looking at what you're doing. But man, if you just take a second to like raise your eyes up, it's like, wow, it looks terrible.
Well, I think it's because if I remember correctly from my Excitebike lore, is that it all happens in Cronenberg universe from Rick and Morty. So they're all Cronenberg Excitebike fans.
So we're gonna go off on another crazy tangent here, but this one's shorter. So. Apparently, there's a beer brewery called Cronenberg.
Oh, well, we have to go there.
Well, I mean, it's spelled differently. It's obviously not the same thing.
Oh.
And I'm thinking that's how it's pronounced. I've decided that it is because it makes the joke funnier. But I use a smartphone app called Untapped, and it's supposed to be like a dumb social networking thing for beer. I don't care about any of that. I use it because human memories are fallible, as we discussed earlier, I think.
Or did we?
So I just use it to like log, like, oh, here's a beer, here's about how I felt about it. So if I am ever struggling to order something, I can look at things that I've ordered before. Well, this one was from like Cronenberg Brewery, and when you log it, you can put in a like a little comment or a quote about it because it's supposed to be like a social network. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if anyone follows me on there. I don't think so, but I put as my comment for that beer, wow, Morty, I really Cronenberged up this beer, didn't I?
Yes, that is fantastic. And that's yeah, we should check that place out because I would just love to be like, oh yeah, no, I went to Cronenberg Brewery, and then
I'm fairly confident it's either in Canada or Germany.
Well, I mean,
we could still go.
It's too bad we didn't do that when we went to Germany. Wait, we went to Germany, right?
Yeah, I have photographs, I think.
Yeah, sure. Or did we? Anyways, so the visuals for me, and this kind of so first of all, I didn't realize this when I was younger, especially because I think the games that I played on the NES and then subsequently on the Super Nintendo were kind of all over the place. Like, for instance, like, you know, you look at Excitebike and you compare its visuals to like Super Mario 3, it's almost like they're on different platforms, right?
Yes,
But
it does feel that way.
yeah, but if you compare Excitebike to like Super Mario World, right, or Super Mario, right?
Right.
They're much more comparable, you know. So I do have
in the interest of like a historical timeline,
Mhm.
Excitebike was a near launch title in Japan and a launch title in the US. So there was like 4 years between Excitebike, Super Mario World, or Super Mario Brothers, and then Super Mario Brothers 3. And you typically see that kind of evolution on a platform where like,
Right.
oh, the original PlayStation games aren't nearly as good as the ones near the end of the system's life cycle. But I mean, when you look at like Excitebike next to Super Mario Brothers 3, it's like, wait, these were really still on the same console.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then immediately, you know, I'd want to be like, well, I know the console can do better. But yeah, like you said, like there is that evolution as time goes. So, you know, I find myself when we're playing NES games, they have to like forcibly remind myself, like, no, remember, this is Nintendo. And so I've actually been enjoying that, if for no other reason than just like to, like, because if you had told me like, oh, well, the jump from NES to Super Nintendo, I was like, yeah, it's okay, but it's nothing compared to like the N64 when you put in the third dimension.
Ooh.
But honestly, there is a stark difference between the two systems and the two platforms. So I'm trying to be more forgiving of the visuals. That being said, I think the visuals were solid. Like you said, they only have a couple of different colors, and this bleeds into gameplay a little bit. But so there are two modes. There's bike by yourself and bike with others, right?
Yes, bike alone or bike with friends.
Right. So I tried both, and with bike with friends, I think is playing it a little fast and loose because it's
they kind of all hate you.
Yeah, and no one had more beef with me than Purple. I do not know what Purple's deal was. I don't know why Purple had some issue with me, but Purple and I did not get along at all because I just every time he just decked me off of my bike, and so like you said, like there's only like however many, like 5 real colors that they can use, and so when you're driving through, they recycle those colors, so it's a different like sprite technically, but to me it was just always Purple, man. Purple
Yeah, and
then
that actually led to a tiny bit of cognitive dissonance, and I've noticed as we've replayed some of these games that because we are trying to look at them with a critical eye, it does like take a little bit of the luster off your enjoyment because you're like looking for things that are going right and looking for things that are going wrong, and that kind of critical attention to detail pulls you a little bit out of the moment, which I mean, it's fine. It's neither here nor there, and I guess we're just delaying that enjoyment to later when we get to, you know, either rant about how terrible it was or rave about how great the game was on the podcast. But I did notice that there are more Excitebikers than actually start the race with you.
Yes.
So I would like blow past everybody at the beginning, and then like Purple would just like fade in from the right side of the screen as I caught up with him. And I'm like, when did you start the race? And why were you allowed to start from way the hell up there? Or were you allowed to start like half an hour ago? And now like I'm expected to catch up with you? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. My only like side thought to that. And I have a bunch of weird thoughts on the mechanics of this universe that we're starting in, but like your placement is based solely on time, which is a little, you know, fine, whatever. So
yeah, the other riders are literally just obstacles. They don't actually impact your place at all.
Right. So to me, it's I kind of in my mind thought of it as like when you do a run, you know, how like you get put into like groups, you know?
Yeah.
And so you can definitely outpace everybody in your group and then still run into other runners, you know? So I just thought of them as like they're in like a third heat.
They're in an earlier wave.
Yeah. That was, and I couldn't have told you that until you mentioned that. And I was like, why didn't that bother me? I was like, oh, right. Because like my brain just said, you know, oh, they've been going and now they're just my problem that I have to deal with. But
I don't know much about motocross. I'm fairly confident it doesn't work like that, but I feel like I remember somebody telling me one time that that's how it works.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could find a transcript of that conversation somewhere,
or at least a recording.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, and also too in motocross, I don't think that you're regularly supposed to be like punching people off of their bikes or like checking them. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I don't know much about motocross, but I don't know. Like it seemed a little bit more like, oh, what is that? The skating when you.
Oh crap. Was that Road Rash?
Road Rash? Is that?
Oh crap. I think it was, yeah, where it was like, you could pick up like chains and stuff.
Yeah.
And like wail on people. Oh man. Oh, we're going to have to play Road Rash eventually now.
It's done. Sounds good to me, because it's going to be a masterclass in comparing that to Excitebike and just being like, it's like Excitebike, but on steroids.
Like Excitebike, but the violence is built in.
So we do try to keep each podcast a standalone. So I won't harp on this too long. But one thing that I was super excited about was I was always very clear on which plane I was in. And after some other games that we've played, that's become a lot more important to me. So that was nice. I did think that like they did a good job with the visuals in the sense that like when I would hit down, like there was a very distinct animation of me like going down and then me shifting down, and that was clearly in, you know, row 3 and whatever.
And you cannot screw that up.
Right. You can't screw it up. And whatever obstacles are in that row are clearly defined in that row. You know, like there was no point where I was like, oh, wait, is this in, you know, row 3 or row 4? It was like I always knew exactly what obstacles I was going to be dealing with and where I was. So I was never struggling with that. Sometimes I'd screw it up anyways, but then it felt like my fault, you know?
Yeah, and that's true for your movement as well, because when you hit down, if you tap down or if you hold down, you will move in increments of whole rows.
Right.
So if you hold down long enough to travel one row, you will move exactly one row. If you tap down, you will move exactly one row. So it, you know, and likewise for up, obviously, but it's nice to see that kind of clarity in a game like this, because they could have easily made obstacles that span multiple rows. They could have made obstacles that were like kind of bled over, like, oh, this one, the graphic only looks like it covers one row, but it's really that row and kind of the one next to it. And like they could have done lazy things like that or annoying design decisions like that, but they were like, no, you're always going to know where you are. You're always going to know exactly what's in front of you. And if you move to another row, you will pass that thing. Right. And they're, I think the mud obstacle is the only one that it's obvious that that's a tile, by which I mean that is like a pre-drawn tile, because there are places where there's 2 rows of mud and it's the exact same tile side by side. Mm-hmm. But that still reinforces like, oh, okay, so now lanes 3 and 4 have mud in them. And if I move to lane 1 or 2, I won't hit the mud.
And I may be wrong on this, but is there ever a situation where it's lane 1 and 2, or is it always 1 and 3 or 2 and 4? Here's why I think it's...
See, this is the fallibility of human memory, because I had such a clear picture of it in my head until you challenged me, and now I'm like...
now it's all shaky. No, here's my data-driven observation on why I think it's probably 1 and 3 or 2 and 4, is because, did you go into the design mode at all?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, no, right? Because that to me was one of the things I remember having the fondest memory of. But when I went in there, I just basically created a course where I was like, put in A obstacle, put in B obstacle, C, D, and just went through the whole thing. I don't remember seeing any of the obstacles in that list where, like, I remember one of them being mud at 1 and 3, and the next one being mud at 2 and 4, and then that was it for mud obstacles.
You know what I think I might be picturing is it's not two muds in the same X axis with 2 in the Y axis. It's 2, so
horizontal.
It's like X3 and X4 have mud. So the first time you see mud, I think it's just a 1 slot, and then later in some of the later tracks they do 2 slots.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, like it's, but yeah, I mean, again, in defense of the visuals, it's always very clear, and I don't know if the system had the power to do something as great as gradiented. Yeah, sure. As like to have, because there's 4 slots, there's 4 lanes, right? I don't know if they even had the power to do a non-lane based system where you could just travel almost continuously, but I'm really glad that they didn't, because again, you know, it to me, it's like the goal of this is to dodge obstacles, go fast, dodge obstacles, jump high, right? Like that's like the core aesthetic. So having something that worked on like a seemingly continuous, right, system as opposed to one that's like quantized at 1, 2, 3, and 4, to me would almost conflict with that aesthetic, because then you would always be wondering like, oh, am I going to clip this? And that would just be kind of a pain. So,
and I'm pretty sure they could have done what would have appeared to our eyes as a gradient, even though, I mean, they're pixels, so there has to literally be a cutoff somewhere. But I think they could have done things that would have appeared as a gradient, but for mechanics reasons, which, I mean, we're really straying into mechanics here, but for mechanics reasons, they decided not to, which I'm with you on. Like, there's very little benefit to the player to saying, hey, you know, this game about dodging obstacles, we've made it harder to tell where the obstacles are.
Right.
Like, that's not... Maybe you have like an advanced mode or something, like in a more modern game where it's like now the obstacles are harder to see, or now they're invisible and you have to just remember where they are or something like that. But I mean, a game like this in this era, you kind of expected it to do what it says on the tin. And it's like, if that's where the mud is and I'm anywhere but right there, I'm not hitting the mud.
Right. And because there were a couple of times when, in this trace in the mechanics, but where like I'd wipe out and I was like, I don't really know why I wiped out there. But then like given enough time, as I started to work through, I'm like, oh, okay, this is why, you know. But it was never a situation when I would wipe out like that, it would be like on a jump, you know. There was never a situation where all of a sudden I'm like, why am I moving slowly? It's like, well, because you're moving through grass or through mud or whatever. So I felt the visuals were very clear in that sense. And
it does do a little spray animation.
Yeah.
Like when you're in the grass, you go through the mud, it does like a little, you know, debris flying up from the back tire, which I was like, oh, that's cute. I like that.
Another thing on the visuals, and this kind of deals with mechanics a little bit, but another thing on the visuals that I noticed, so there's 2 buttons. There's A, which makes you go fast, and B, which makes you go faster. Right.
Which I like that.
I like that too, because it's like, what you don't need a break in this game. Like there's no reason to go slower, you know?
Yeah.
But so when I was playing, you know, single player mode, right, just going through and, you know, I hit button A and I'm going, and I'd hit button B, and I didn't really, it makes a different sound, but I couldn't really tell exactly what it did until all of a sudden I hit a jump and just moved off of that jump like I was just on cocaine, you know? And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going faster. And it really became visually, I became aware of it when I went into play B mode or whatever, when it's you versus friends, I'd say. And when you hit B, you just start blowing by people, right? And then we hit A, you normally keep pace, right?
Yeah, because they're your only frame of reference.
Right. The only other frame of reference you have is the audience, which I wasn't really looking at because Cronenberg's, and the little they're a little like, I guess, whatever holes.
Oh yeah, there's the photographers, I guess.
There's the photographers, and there's like little poles or something like towards the top of the screen and the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah. So those are your like frames of reference, right? So when you hit B, so when you're hitting A, all of that's passing at rate A, right? And when you hit B, all of that continues to pass at rate A. The bikers move slower. So I don't think that you're making the engine go faster. I think that you're slowing down time around you. and everybody. So I think it's a time machine. And I'm pretty sure. In fact, I'm certain that I read somewhere in the past that
that would make your crashes far more spectacular. Because from the universe's point of view, you're hitting this thing at like an unacceptable speed.
Yes. Yeah. No, like all of a sudden, like, because, you're like, well, this bike can only go 60 miles an hour. It's kind of like how when you approach the speed of light, it's like, look, man, the speed of light can only go this fast. It's like, well, I'm going near the speed of light. So what about the light I'm generating? It would have to go faster, right? No, speed of light doesn't change.
Nope.
Something's got to bend. So it's going to be time. Wait, what? Yeah. So time's going to dilate a little bit. It'll be fine. You won't notice it. People around you will. And it's like, no, hang on, wait. Just make the light go faster. No. So I like that concept applied in Excitebike, where it's like, look, man, this bike can only go 60 miles an hour. Well, I need it to go faster. Okay, well, we can't do that. We can slow down time. Oh, well, yeah, that works too.
Well, and this speaks to slightly more in the realm of reality. This speaks this speaks to like some of the interesting workarounds / things that were openly ignored / things people didn't realize they were ignoring in game design. Because it's not like people 25 years ago were idiots. There's probably people who worked on this game who were like, oh man, when you go faster, to make the entire rest of the world move faster so that it's like a consistent experience and feeling of acceleration, that'd be super hard, or maybe impossible. Like maybe they didn't at that time have a good way to like make the Nintendo communicate that information to you. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to make your bike dilate time.
Yep.
And everyone else will slow down and you will continue to move at what seems to be the same speed, but which will appear to be faster.
Well, I would certainly believe that the Nintendo was just unable to render at the time those images that quickly. It's like the what is it? The Silent Hill series with the fog, Yes. Like how they were just like, and it's like awesome and super creepy, but it's just really hiding the draw distance. Or I just recently read that apparently when they were making, I think, Wing Commander, like basically
the exit prompt.
Yeah, the exit prompt. Yeah, so basically like every time it would exit, it would give like this like random error. So it said like, error 404, blah, blah, blah. And so the person just changed the error message to read, thank you for playing Wing Commander. And it's like, that's brilliant, So it's,
that one's in like game design legend. And I mean, the fog thing in Silent Hill, it's like usually when in modern gaming, when we think of like, cutting it, like, oh, there's this new mechanic because the technology is there to like do VR, to do, super realistic faces, and like you can count their eyelashes and stuff. Like we forget sometimes that every game leading up to this, at the time that game was made, they probably also felt like they were pushing the boundaries of what was possible.
Oh, absolutely.
So when you think about like Excitebike, I mean, I don't have it up in front of me right now, but basically the only part of the screen that isn't constantly being redrawn is the like status bar at the bottom.
Yeah.
But pretty much 100% of the screen is being redrawn every single frame.
Right. So
that's an intense amount of processing power.
Yeah, that's a lot of heavy lifting. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they were like, we are literally making them feel like they're moving as fast as humanly possible all the time, which is absolutely the call, right? Because you want to feel like you're moving as fast as humanly possible all the time. And so then it's just like, well, how can we make them feel like they're moving faster? It's like, well, we can either make them default move slower so that way they can feel like they're moving faster. It's like, well, that stinks. It's like, or we can just do this like one visual glitch, which will make them feel like they're moving even faster. And I'm like, that's a win to me. Now, actually, and to speak to a mild tangent, to speak to one of the things that you're saying before, is I think that one of the things that modern gaming and modern movies both suffer from now is our ability to do anything has kind of made some games and movies lose some of their magic, just simply because, like, for example, and this is a movie example comes to mind. So I was talking with a friend of ours recently, and she was saying that, she went to go see one of the new apparently Aliens. The Aliens franchise is still making movies, which I don't know what that's about. But
Oh yeah, the newest one is called "Oh my God, they made another Aliens movie."
yeah, actually, I remember seeing that on the poster for sure. I remember that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyways, and all this is true. Oh, so, but you know, she said, like, oh my gosh, like 50 things popped out of people's chests. Like there were just 1,000 chest exploders. And I was just kind of like, she was like, in the first movie that happened once. And then you were just terrified of it happening again. I'm like, yeah, probably because it cost a lot of money to do that effect. And so the same thing with the lightsabers in, you know, Star Wars, or with like or like this with Excitebike, where, you know, it's like, you know, in the original Star Wars, you were super excited when they pulled out the lightsabers because it was so rare, you know, and it's like, because it cost a lot of money to do that effect and they just didn't have the money to do it, you know? And so in the prequels, when like everybody's got a lightsaber and it's like seizure inducing to watch the movies, it's kind of a bummer. So I think,
Yeah, I mean, probably the most classic example of that is the shark in Jaws. You almost never see the shark in Jaws because it looked ridiculous and because it cost a fortune and because every time they got it near the water, it broke. So
yeah, exactly.
like, yeah, they were really incentivized to not overshow the monster in that monster movie. And then, you know, flash forward, God, 20 plus years. Do you remember the movie Cloverfield?
I thought for sure you were going to go Sharknado, but yes, I also. No, I never saw Cloverfield.
That would have been the more salient reference, but unfortunately, I have not had time to see that movie yet. Yeah. So in Cloverfield, I remember when that movie was getting ready to come out, friends of ours who were like big into horror movies and monster movies and stuff were like, "Oh my God, like you're going to be able to go in and like the big thing is like you're never going to see the monster. Like nobody knows what the monster looks like." I was like, "Oh, huh, yeah." Because I mean, I'm not a big horror movie guy, so I was like, "Yeah, I guess that would make it scarier." Because like fear of the unknown and blah blah blah. And then either right before the movie was released or right after, somebody leaked or found like a model of what because I mean they knew what the monster looked like so that it could interact with the world in a consistent way.
Right.
And then the model got leaked or whatever, and it was shown to the world, and it was like kind of dumb looking and like sort of underwhelming.
Yeah.
And I'm sure most people were just like, "Oh, now Cloverfield's dumb." And it's like, no, that's the whole point.
Right.
The whole point is that it was like the unknown that you were afraid of. And now that you know, it is lost. I mean, it's still a giant monster that could step on you, but like now you know what you're dealing with, whereas before you didn't.
Well, it's exactly the idea of like with Doctor Who, where it's, you know, you never know what's going to be in your room until you find it, and then you realize it couldn't have been anything else. It's like you're gonna make up the most terrifying thing to you in your brain. And I think that leads us nicely back into the visuals in Excitebike, which is that it terrified me to my very core. Right? Yes.
Yeah.
No. So again, you know, it's an NES game. You know, the visuals. I felt that the visuals. Just to put my bow on visuals, I felt that like we said, is that they suited the purpose very well. They suited the mechanics very well, and honestly. Yes, they were underwhelming compared to like Super Mario World or something like that, you know, or I mean, certainly, you know, like The Last of Us. Like I wouldn't compare Excitebike to like The Last of Us, you know.
That's very generous of you.
I know. I mean, hey, I'm an altruist at heart, but that being said, I thought that I thought they were good. I thought they served the medium well.
I agree. I do have this one other complaint before we jump into audio, which is your bike vibrates, which is cool because like that feels pretty realistic. Like, you know, it's a dirt bike. You would expect it to, you know, be vibrating with the powerful engine. But you don't vibrate, which is also cool because it would be really disorienting if the thing you were staring at was fully vibrating. Mm-hmm. So I get why they did that, but I just could not stop wondering what kind of like shock mount your seat is on that you are perfectly stationary when you're on this thing that is freaking out all the time.
Hey man, it's a time machine. I don't think they're going to skimp on the shocks, you know?
That's fair. I mean, maybe you need some kind of special shocks to travel through time.
I certainly wouldn't. I mean, not personally. I know of time travel. I'm not personally an expert. But that conforms to my existing known biases to time travel. So
Okay.
But yeah, no, I think that I did notice that the bike did vibrate. And I didn't, but to be honest, I didn't put together that like you didn't, you know?
I mean, I think that was that was the right decision, because I don't know about you, but for me, I realized that I was staring almost entirely at the character's head, like as my judgment of where I was.
And
And if that,
yeah.
right? And if that thing was like blurry all the time, that would be really annoying, like impossibly annoying.
Yeah.
So I understand why they did it. I just like, when I was messing with the turbo speed and versus the regular speed, it just occurred to me, I was like, oh, huh. What am I sitting on that I am so calm and relaxed, and how do I get a pillow made out of it?
Ooh, wait. Aside from the time travel argument, I might have another sciencey way to back this.
You consider that okay? Go on.
No, is it okay? So the problem is, and because I have done some pixel art, you know, and so I can speak a little bit to the fact that you put one pixel in a different place and it completely changes what you're looking at, right? You know, because I mean, you don't have a lot of pixels to work with. So, and I will say, like, I'm not a huge motocross fan personally, but I will say, like, when you're looking at like a running, like, you know, like Kawasaki or something like that, right? You can see the, you know, like engine and the, you know, like the chassis like vibrating a little bit, but you typically don't register, like the person has to be vibrating a little bit too, but they're vibrating less, you know, because they're stabilizing themselves, and there are shocks, right? So there is a threshold of vibration that registers as a pixel moving and a threshold that does not. And the biker is under that threshold, and the bike is over it.
I prefer magic time travel shocks.
Excellent. So you see, we give our listeners options, you know, either
it's all about false dichotomies.
Exactly. But yeah, so overall visual is pretty good. What do you think of the music?
So this is another game, like a few other games we've played, that until I had to think about the music, it didn't really occur to me that there, you know, like isn't any.
Right.
So there's the music on the title screen, and this is another song that you can tell when you look back on your life as an adult. I think you can really tell what things have stayed in the forefront of your mind, and then you are sometimes shocked to find out what things are deep in your subconscious. Because when, you know, I've got like my list of things I'm going to take notes about, and, you know, I sit down to play the game, and the second the game turned on and it played the title music, which is the only music, what's on the title screen, and the victory screen music, but it played the title screen music, and I was immediately like, oh, Excitebike. Like seeing an old friend I haven't seen in a long time. Like I couldn't have told you, you know, their name 20 minutes prior, but then all of a sudden I was like, do 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 do. Yeah, it just all came flooding back. And then when I got into the stage and there was like no music, I was like, oh yeah, that's the only music in the game, which is why it's so deeply ingrained.
Yeah, no, that victory tune, which is, you know, what you were just humming, like that to me is, I again, like you said, and I think we've mentioned it before, is, you know, Manchurian Candidate, you know, like somebody could have just like played that to me and been like, well, it's Excitebike and time to go kill the president. So here we go. You know, like
do 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 do.
Now I want to see that movie again, but like he's humming that as he's like assembling the rifle. Yeah, no, but aside from that, no, yeah, there is no music, because it kind of like almost gives you like a false climax, because it starts as the match starts, the race starts, you know, it goes like, you know, dun dun, and then it does like that 1, 2, 3, go, no music, and it's just like, oh right, there's no music during this bit.
To be fair though, because I feel like the gas noise is like pretty tolerable, and that's what you're hearing, you know, 75% of the time. Mm-hmm. Unless you're a really crappy driver, then you keep hearing like the crowd noise, because every time you crash, there's kind of like it's supposed to be like a roar, murmur of the crowd,
right?
And it's amorphous enough that I'm not sure if the noise they're making is supposed to be one of excitement, like yay, a crash, or like, oh my God, are they okay? Like it's,
oh my God, we are worse than the ancient Romans.
yeah, it's just kind of like, and I mean, maybe this might have been another thing that they intentionally designed. Like, we don't want it to sound like excitement. We don't want it to sound like panic. We need something kind of in the middle.
Right. Something to where, it's the audience is clearly reacting, so
Yes.
it doesn't like make you think like, oh, I just wiped out and nobody cares. But, at the same point in time, they're like, yeah, but we don't want them to it's not the dog and duck hunt where your only ally is openly mocking you, like,
God, I hate that dog so much.
oh yeah. No, I mean, how many blind shots did you take at that dog?
All of them.
Yeah.
But so at the other like main noise you hear is the turbo gas noise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is horrible. Like that noise is horrible.
Yeah.
But it is nothing compared to the you're about to overheat noise, like the overheat warning.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's an alarm, so it's definitely doing its job.
Yes. No, and that's the thing is so that was literally I've got like 3 notes on sound because it's just like there's the music of which it's very memorable and very short, and then the bike noises, and yeah, like you said, it's that the one that you hear most of the time is tolerable. The one that you hear when you're hitting the time travel turbo boost is more, and then the alarm of like, oh God, it's just you either need to shut this down or it's all going to shut down on its own in a couple seconds noise, right? And so, but I liked that because I didn't always have to like be keeping my eye staunchly on the heat meter. I could just
you could play the game without the heat meter at all. Like the audio and the visuals each function independently.
Yeah, which was great because like a lot of times like I'd just be like, I'm gonna hit this as hard as I can for as long as I can, and then like I just hear, and then sometimes I'd hear it start to do like the overheat noise, and I'd know I'm like I've still got like a 2-second count before or 3-second count before I actually overheat. I just need that extra second to clear this jump, and I'd clear the jump and then like ease off of it, So considering how fast and loose I was playing it with the turbo boost, I think I only overheated like 2 or 3 times, which I think is less a statement on my prowess and more a statement of how stark the audio was to like remind me like, hey, stop it,
Yeah, no, because I mean that noise happens and then you're like anything to make that noise stop. Just,
yeah.
What do you want me to do? Let my foot off the gas? Whatever well, it's a bike. Let my hand off the gas? That sounds weird.
Yeah. Yeah. But accurate. But yeah, no, that. And so, yeah, so I thought that the sound very adequately complemented gameplay, especially because again, when you're talking about NES games, you really like with SNES games and up, I know they had a lot more memory to play with. So they, especially with like platformers and things like that, they could play it a lot more fast and loose with like what they wasted memory on and what they didn't, So I feel that like in this game where, it's about the visuals. It's about like got to go fast. This is the Sonic of the NES, right? So I think that they seem to have spent a lot of their energy, time, and resources on the visuals, and then just didn't really do a whole lot with the sound. And I'm kind of okay with that.
Well, did you notice too that almost all of the sound effects are an attempt at realism? Right, like the engine is supposed to sound like an engine vibrating, and when you're pushing it to its limit, it's supposed to sound like an engine redlining, which is why it's overheating, and you can only do that for so long. And the crowd roar is supposed to sound like indistinguishable murmuring from thousands of people. Like everything is more or less an attempt at realism, except when you go over a jump. And it goes whoop. It's like a super cartoony video gamey noise that is like nowhere in the realm of, as far as I know, this memory I'm pretty clear on. I don't think I've ever been near a person that and it's funny because I mean the whole game is obviously video gamey, right? I mean just like every other game, but but everything else feels like an attempt at like, oh, it's just like motocross, and you get on your bike and you have to be careful how hard you push it, and you have to land with, you know, the bike at the right angle and everything, and but then every time you go over a jump, it's just whoop.
Yep. Yeah. Now also I want to see a supercut of like motocross, but like every time they jump, it's just that sound effect of like whoop. Especially because like normally there's a lot of them, so I just want to hear like whoop 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 whoop. It's like they're all.
I would be profoundly disappointed in the internet if there's not already a video like that on YouTube.
All right, no, I'm writing that down. Hang on. Visit YouTube, visit the tubes, get that video and watch it, and then giggle like a small child.
You consider there's about 2 billion people who have access to the internet. There is just statistically, there is no way in hell we're the first people to think of that. And there are just so many more people with free time on their hands that you and I don't have. Like, seriously, I would be profoundly disappointed. Also, I will like go buy a lottery ticket because that's how statistics works.
Yeah. No, now we can resolve this offline, but a small part of me wants to be like, slap bet, and then and then you got to find it. Like if you can find it, then you win the slap bet. But if you can't, you're looking it up right now, aren't you?
No, but I'm. Do you want to go to slap bet over this? We could go to slap bet over this.
No, because I'm pretty sure that you're right. I don't want to get slapped.
All right. I just want it to be a thing that we both get to enjoy, so we will find it after the show.
Okay, so it's a gentleman's agreement then.
Gentleman's bet. Yeah.
All right, yeah.
You
Anyways, but that's really all I had for sound. You know, like I felt that all the sounds were complemented gameplay when they existed. You know.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, what you would expect from a NES era game. I do think that they may have. Technologically, I think they may have been able to put some kind of simple music underneath the constant bike sound, like the engine rumble. But even if they could, let's even pretend they somehow had the full, you know, audio chip that they could have somehow devoted to 2 tasks. I don't think it would have really worked very well because the music is simple enough on a NES cartridge that even if you somehow could use its full power, if you then put the rumble noise over that, it would probably just sound like garbage.
Yeah, no, I mean, almost certainly. And again, like, I think that was the choices. They were like, we can either do the sound effects, which, you know, let the player know what's going on in the game, or have some nonsense chiptune-y, you know, music. And I mean, like, honestly, I mean, it's possible that if they had like some good chiptune music that like people would still play the Excitebike chiptunes or whatever, you know, but I don't think Excitebike was ever going to be Mega Man or Mario level like music, you know? So
yeah, it's not what any of us came here for.
No, I didn't come here for, you know, like do 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 do. That was just get that right back in your head.
Just off top of your head.
Yeah.
First song came to mind.
Yep. that is, for the rest of my life, that is always the first song that comes to my mind.
That's fair.
So
controls, and I guess controls and mechanics, because the nature of this game is that the way you control it is what all the mechanics are.
Yeah. To me, like we always do like kind of controls, mechanics, like that's all kind of the same. Generally, they're close enough intertwined. It's kind of hard to differentiate between the two.
I think the more modern you get, the more these things are divided. And this is, unless you go to, you know, pre-modern consoles, you don't get a whole lot earlier generation than Excitebike.
That is true.
So
yes.
I mean, dividing them is pointless. But the one. No, there were 2. Okay, sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. There were 2 specific mechanics that really irritated me. And I'll call them out because otherwise I feel like the mechanics are fairly inoffensive. Yeah. But if you are behind, like if you're further behind another driver when you interact, whoever's in the back always takes the fall.
Yes.
It does not slow down or cause any grief to the driver who's in front.
Yeah.
So you basically are 100% disincentivized from ever like rear-ending someone.
Right.
But this is the one time where it's not your Y plane that you're struggling, or your Z plane that you're struggling with. It's your X plane.
Mhm.
But if you are in a lane next to someone, you really got to think twice before you like go barging into their lane. You need to be damn sure you are just slightly ahead of them, because otherwise you're going to fall to the ground like an ass and they're going to just drive away, giving you the finger and laughing.
Yes. So a couple of things on that. One is, so I agree that was frustrating, because there were a couple of times when somebody would just like jam into my lane, and it was like, and I was having difficulty processing. I'm like, well, I can either avoid the mud obstacle or completely wipe out. And my brain would be like, avoid the mud obstacle. It's like, obviously. And then it's like, no, wait, that was clearly the wrong decision. So yeah, that was definitely frustrating. But I will, in defense of that mechanic, I will say, like, the nice thing is that, like you said, you always wipe out. If you, like the person in behind, they always wipe out. So then, like, if you're ahead, I would a lot of times wipe out other people, just as long as I knew that, like, I was. And normally I give it like the wheel. Like if my back wheel was fully ahead of their back wheel, then I would just barge into their lane like it was nobody's business and just slap the heck out of them, and then just like blaze off into the distance. And especially if that driver was purple, because man, there was one time, and I knew that the game had gotten to me, when there was a purple driver who was like just barely behind me, and I let off the gas altogether. So, so that way he'd run into me. And the funny thing is, like you said at the beginning, your place isn't based on the people that you're racing. It's based solely on your time, right? So I didn't gain anything out of that. I actively lost time, which means I hurt myself, and to no avail. But I felt better.
Is this like a Hatfield McCoy's thing? Like you and the purple riders can't even remember who started the feud. But like for generations of purple and red riders, we've been fighting each other in the streets.
But just like the Doctor Who episode, it's only been 20 minutes, Yeah. But actually, I can say with 100% certainty, my memory says that it was the purple riders that started it. So I'm pretty confident in asserting that.
Well, and in true justice fashion, since there are no purple riders here to defend themselves, I'm going to have to give it to you as being the right person in this case.
Yeah, being right is 100% a function of showing up.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sounds right. That was frustrating. I will definitely say that, because there were definitely a couple of times when, I would just be driving along and somebody would be like, ooh, hey, I want in his lane. And I'd be like, well, I couldn't really have anticipated you doing that. And especially on the areas where it was a 2-lane, where like the top 2 lanes were dirt.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was just like, I have to be in one of these 2 lanes, and I can't be in yours because then it will wipe me out. So I'm just in this one and just hoping that you don't wipe me out. So yeah, that was frustrating.
Although I didn't feel, your negative history with the purple riders aside, I didn't feel like the other drivers were overly aggressive.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Like there were times where I was like, oh, I was headed for the ramp, and they also wanted to hit the ramp, and we collided, but I didn't often feel like that asshole just drove right into me, right? like it was usually the tiny little bit of motocross I've actually seen in reality, most collisions, like, you can get really hurt.
Oh God, yes.
And best case scenario, it just makes you perform worse in the race. Like those drivers, I keep flipping back and forth. Those sailors, they don't really want to collide, because it helps no one and it potentially hurts everyone.
Right.
So the AI such that it is, but like the computer controlled characters did not feel like they knew that I was the human and they were trying to make my life harder. Like
right.
they all acted like they were also trying to win the race, which it is nice because that's probably partially a limitation of the technology, but I mean, they could have made the other riders act like huge schmucks and just crash into you constantly, but they didn't because that would be slightly less realistic and way less fun.
Way less fun. Although I agree with everything that you're saying, and it's starting to sound like I had to be the one that started this feud. Because if we're saying that the AI is like, yeah, the AI is not that aggressive. Like, yeah, no, it's not. It never really came after me. No, it didn't. Wait a minute. And
well, so let's take this, way out to the extreme. So these riders, they're all like genuine good people. Some of them probably have families, right? Like
certainly.
they just this is their career, it's their passion. Like they just want to get out there and run the race and have a good time and maybe take home a trophy. You, from their point of view, are an immortal demigod with a time machine.
Yep.
Who just occasionally decides that you don't like the color of someone's shirt.
Yep.
And push them to have a life-threatening crash. And then when you're bored with toying with their lives, turn off their universe.
Yes. Yeah. No. Then I sing the song that ends the world. Yeah. I don't know, man. I might be wrong. It sounds like I might be the villain. Nah.
No, surely
no. No, I'm the hero. Anyways, because everything you described, that's what heroes do. On a more back to mechanics. So one of the things that I noticed that I don't know when this mechanic was birthed. It may be very well this game, but little arrows, chevrons on the floor mean go faster, right?
They mean something. I mean, typically, I would say in modern driving games, they mean go faster. In this one, they mean cool your engine down.
And that was a huge realization to me, was because I'm used to modern gaming where it's like you see the chevrons on the ground. Generally, that means go faster. And I'd hit the chevrons, but then again, it doesn't. Your speed doesn't change the background going faster or not, right? So I was like, oh well, obviously it's making me go faster, until I started playing with all of the other people's, and I was like, is this make me be going any faster? But then all of a sudden I saw it just cool my engine way down, and I was like, oh, amazing. And then if I knew, because there's 5 tracks.
5, yeah,
5. So as I played track 1, more and more, I started to memorize where it's some of the stuff was. And so I just hardline it. My engine's dude, you got to cool it back. I'm like, no, check this out. And then I just hit that engine cool down, and it was just all gravy. So that was a huge realization for me, that the chevrons didn't make you go faster. They gave you the ability to go faster longer. So
they are the dilithium crystals to your warp drive.
Yes. No notes. Great statement. I agree 100%.
Yay. So this is, I had to do something I haven't done in many other games we've played through, which is I had to dip into the internet a couple of times, because for most of the games we've played, I don't have original manuals sitting around. You just, you have your nostalgia in the game and you just go for it. And a lot of my sensibilities have been tainted by modern gaming, where there are things that I've started to take for granted that at this time in history you could not take for granted, or things that were invented decades after this that there was no concept of at this time in history. And with the chevrons, I was like, they mean something, surely. But I agree with you. I didn't feel like I was going any faster, and I hadn't really put it together yet. And then I needed to look something up online about the game, because so there's a thing about mechanics I'll get into more in a minute, but I kept crashing on landings. And so I went to look something up about the controls, and it was oh yeah, the chevrons cool your engine down so you can, turbo more. And I was like, But then in defense of the game design, there's no sound effect when that happens, but your temperature gauge goes below the normal driving temperature.
Right.
So when you're holding down like the normal gas, it's at about 50%. And it never goes below 50% unless you stop, which why would you ever do that? So when you hit the chevrons, it drops to like 25%.
Right.
So there is actually a visual indicator that something has happened, but because I was able to rely on the audio, I wasn't in the habit of looking down there for any reason.
Right.
So like I was just kind of like, oh, okay, like I understand how that works out. The thing that I had to look up was landing like flush is not frequently what they actually want you to do. You are almost always encouraged to either land back wheel, like wheelie style, or front wheel, which like I'm not a motocrossalist, but I'm pretty sure a motocrosser. I'm pretty sure landing with the majority of your weight on your front wheel is not something you typically want to do.
I would that feels like correct, because then so I am pretty confident that landing on the back wheel means that most of your weight would be on your legs versus on the front wheel most of your weight would be on your shoulders and arms. And I can say from personal experience at your bachelor party that there is a stark difference between trying to do something that puts most of the weight on your legs versus most of the weight on your arms. So
true story.
So yeah, no, I would say that is certainly that feels counterintuitive, and also I did not intuit that. I was always trying to land on my back wheel or flush.
So side note, are you not even like the least bit concerned about what bizarre mental images people are now dreaming up with that really vague reference to my bachelor party?
Well, I'm actually really hoping that they're dreaming all of that up and then having trouble distinguishing that from reality. And then like going around saying like, oh man, you won't believe this, the same thing that George did at Lyons' bachelor party. And then like, the legend grows.
Yes, legend. That's the word I would use to describe where people's minds will go.
I mean, we were at Disney World. I don't know if that makes it better or worse, actually.
Well, there were also a lot of spectators. No, that's not helping.
I mean, one of us got severely hurt.
No.
See, this could be another running thing that we could do. Is just like every podcast, like you just give like another like clue to like what the thing was that happened, but
just carried out ad infinitum.
Yeah, but out of order, so like they have to like puzzle them all together.
I like that.
Yep, this will be our national treasure.
Yeah, just like our dedication to research, there's no way we're actually going to follow through.
Oh, God, no. I've already forgotten whatever it was that we said. And in fact, I'll fight to the death that we never said it because I won't remember it.
But yeah, so the way I need to put this capstone on this because the visual for it is absolutely insane. The way I learned that landing on the front wheel, the game sometimes treats as the correct thing, which to be fair, may not have been their intention. This may be like a quirk of the way the game was designed. And if you do it at the right time, you are able to exploit the game engine. Mm-hmm. But if you look up a YouTube video that's something like, like best time Excitebike or something like that, you will see some really cartoony, impossible driving where you have obviously gotten up to speeds that the game was maybe not expecting you to get up to.
Nice.
So like the first place time on track number 1, I think is like 1 minute and 40 seconds or 1 minute and 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. It's a fairly long amount of time. This video is 43 seconds.
Nice.
So, I mean, over half. Yeah, less than half, I guess is the right way to say that. Less than half of the expected, time to beat. And some of the ramps he goes over, it just flies over them and then lands on the front wheel and bounces over other ramps. Like it's just super bizarre. But there were a couple times where like after I saw that and then I went back to the game and I would come off of a jump where I had crashed trying to land flush and I would land on the front wheel instead. And I was like,
Hmm. Yeah, that is odd. That sounds like I may be. I don't know how the game's made, but that seems like it might be like a, you know, as long as value X for your landing is equal to 1, like 1 is ideal, 2 is less ideal, 0 is least ideal, and it just did like an absolute value of that, and 0 is flush, you know, so it's just kind of like landing on your back is like, because they were like, that's the ideal, but then like it also means like, and you can also land that same angle forward, and it's like, well, whatever. But now I'm just picturing, because like I've seen videos of people doing like little tricks on, you know, like bikes like that where they like hop on the front wheel, you know, but now I'm picturing that, but they're like hopping over cars and stuff, and it's just kind of like, that's way different.
Yeah, no, the game feels very like an attempt at realism until you see like a world record time for some of the courses, and you're like, oh, now it's impossible video gamey jumps. And I mean, it's still it's still fine, but you know, it's like a toddler picking up something and being like, oh, look at how strong I am. And then like the guy who plays the mountain in Game of Thrones picking up like the 1,000-year-old tree, just being like, and it's like, oh, that, okay. So when you said strong, did you mean on the same spectrum as like what that guy's doing?
Yeah, because that guy, he's a little bit stronger. Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, though, a lot of the times when you see like speed runs, especially ones where like it's like speed runs that are exploiting glitches, they get the wildest one I saw was for Mario 64, where, you know, like Mario would like jump, and then like just like seize and spasm, and then like like suddenly like appear behind a door. I'm like, whoa, what? I mean, he looked like the Flash, like he was just vibrating fast enough to pass through the door. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, the game that sounds like something the game would do, you know?
Yeah, and to be fair, I don't recall seeing any of the computer players ever awkwardly land on their front wheels, so that may actually just be exploiting the game engine. Like, hey, this is something the game allows, so I'm gonna do it.
It's a legitimate tactic.
Yeah.
One of the things that is similar, so when playing the game, that I realized that this emotion that I have is pervasive, is that getting wiped out right in front of the finish line, it doesn't matter whether it's Mario Kart 64, whatever, all that, it is that exact same emotion, because like I was just so close, and then just and it was purple. Maybe this is when it started, but it was a purple that came in and just wiped me out like 2 feet away from the finish line. I was like, oh, what now? I'm coming for you. And yeah, that was probably the genesis of that. But yeah, so I just thought it was very interesting that it doesn't matter like the graphics, it doesn't matter the point in my life, that emotion is exactly the same.
Well, and Purple Guy didn't even like steal the victory from you, because you're all just competing against the clock.
Yeah.
So it's not even like, oh, I'm going after him because he got first when I should have gotten first. It's like, no, you just made my life harder.
Yep. But yeah, that
yeah, but you feel the same.
Yeah, the emotion, like I said, the emotion's exactly the same. And it made me kind of wonder, like, are there other emotions like that are, you know, like transposable, where it's just kind of like, you know, this type of frustration or failure is exactly the same as this other type. But yeah, being, especially because in that particular run I was doing pretty well, so like it's the emotion of doing very, very well at something and having it taken from you at the very last minute. Like that stinks, man. It doesn't matter what you're doing, that is awful. And this game, the nice thing though is it only happened once, unlike with some especially modern games where it's just kind of like, oh, well, you have another player who's in 8th place, so we've got to give them the ultra mega superstar, you know, all that kind of rubber band physics. It only happened the once, but the one time it did happen, I was like, oh, I felt this way before, you know.
So I will know if Susan listens to this episode or not, because she has very strong feelings about the blue shell.
I'm sure because she's good at Mario Kart, so
she is good at Mario Kart, and because you know I have a Switch now, so we were playing Mario Kart together, and
that was your first mistake.
No, her and I can play competitively and not get divorced afterwards.
Oh yeah, my wife and I cannot.
No, 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 you cannot. Which is why you are still married, because you know that about yourself.
Yeah, we learned that real fast.
But we were playing, and she was talking about the blue shell, and I was trying to be all like pseudo game designer, and I was like, well, it's the whole point with Mario Kart is they were trying to make it like as fair of a race for as many players as possible. So like no matter how far in the back you are, you always feel like there's still a chance that you could catch up and win. And first off, she was having none of that. But secondly, she compromised with what I thought was actually quite reasonable, which is the point of a game, and this should be true of basically any game, is to like have a good time playing it. Mm-hmm. So in her mind, the blue shell should only exist when you are playing against other humans, because the computer does not have a better time when it screws you.
That's interesting, because I absolutely, because I don't play. I mean, I played Mario 64, and then not much of the newer ones as they came out. I assumed that the blue shell only came up for humans. Oh yeah, why? Nope. Why?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it's easier game design to just say like, oh, it's a consistent experience. But that's the thing, is like when you are inches from the finish line and someone in 38th place freaking blue shells you, and then Luigi goes flying past you like a smartass, and you're just like, what just happened? Yeah, and then it's like, so the computer is, at this moment at least, still an inanimate object that is not happy that it won. I, the human who paid to have this experience, am now angry because I feel like I've been cheated.
Not only are you angry, but especially because Luigi beat you. I mean, like
Luigi.
No, I mean, there's no worse defeat, because Luigi is, I think, one of the worst monsters in history. I think we can say that in confidence.
Pretty safely, yes.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think that's like an interesting argument, that like this superpower that lets other people have a good time shouldn't be available to the computer.
No, I agree with that 100%. So much so that I assumed that it wasn't. Like I was just kind of like, oh yeah, no, when you're playing by yourself, single player. I mean, obviously,
it's possible in Mario Kart 6. Was it first in 64?
I think the blue shell was first in 64, but it was super rare, even when you were playing with other people. Like that's one of the reasons why, as long as we're on this tangent, I have disliked the evolution of Mario, because I definitely understand the idea. It's like, oh, well, you want to have, a broad spectrum experience and all that sort of stuff. But to me, like with 64, is if I was really good at the game and you were good at the game, there was still enough rubber band physics that we could still like have a, be close, but if I was really good at the game and somebody was like moderate or bad, I would consistently beat them. That is no longer
like
true.
You'd expect.
Right. Exactly. That's no longer true. So the blue shell existed, but it was so rarely, you got it so rarely that I couldn't tell you for sure whether or not I ever got nailed with it when I was in single player mode,
Yeah.
But now my understanding is they give that stuff away like candy.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you get to the end of especially in the higher cups or in the higher CCs, like you get to the end of a race where you were in first place the whole time and you didn't get blue shelled at least once, that is surprising.
Yeah. And that one and being turned into a bullet bill, I remember, are the two that drove me the most off the wall.
The bullet bill isn't, maybe they toned it down because I know it's been in at least 2 iterations of the game, but the blue shell is the only one that I feel is like controller in the wall screaming that the game is cheating. Everything else is like, oh no, they got that power I find annoying, or oh no, they have a red shell but I don't have anything to block it with. But the blue shell is just like, well, there's only one way to defend against this, and the defense is actually more rare than the weapon. So yeah. Anyway.
Excitebike. There was one other thing that I wanted to just touch. One thing I want to make sure that we discussed was the level designer.
Oh yes,
like that. I think we got to talk about that, because that is awesome, and that's one of the things that I remember like having the warmest feelings about, was just building these absurd freaking tracks. when I was younger, just like jump, super jump, whatever, boost, like all that, just seeing how much you could break it. That was just a blast.
Well, so the one thing I have to say about this before we get into like what it was like to actually use it is, did you try and use the save mechanic?
I did, but
Did you notice it doesn't work?
No, so I did in the sense that I like saved and then immediately played the track and then like abandoned it. Like so I didn't try to. I guess the problem is I didn't try to load.
So there's two interesting things with the design mechanic that don't really come across clearly in the game. One is when they brought Excitebike to America, Americans never got the hardware that allowed you to save. So in the original instruction manual, thanks Wikipedia, in the original instruction manual, there's like a note that says like, by the way, you can't save, but we didn't bother to alter the menu, Rafflecopter. And so there's a save and a load button, but they do literally nothing. And then the other thing is, if you want to put yourself into like a Sisyphusian hell, as I often do, when you open the designer for the first time, like when you just booted the game up, and then you say you want to play the game before you've actually designed a track, that track has no finish line.
And thus never ends.
So you are on just a featureless hellscape. And if you accidentally discover that bug when you've chosen mode A, so there aren't even other drivers.
It's just you and the road, like
just for all eternity.
Oh, dude, that is a little brother prank just waiting to happen,
Right. And you can't back out. I mean, the only way to get out of a race is to hit the reset button.
Yeah, like to hard shut down the universe, basically. Yeah. No, that is fantastic. No, I mean I never had any siblings, but I could just imagine the delight and glee you could get from saying like, how about this? You know what? If you can finish this track it's a long track, but if you can finish it in under 15 minutes, I'll blankety blank. But if you can't, then blankety blank, whatever, but yes, it is long. It's like, it's long, but if you're really focused and you can get it done, and then just hand it to them and then just go away. And they're like, I don't know, man, I was racing for like half an hour. I just don't know what it did wrong. There weren't any things. So it's like, and then you could even just make it even worse because when they're like, I didn't even see any obstacles. It's like, you didn't find the obstacles? My God, what did you even try again? You're not even
terrible
close
at this game.
It's like telling somebody that, I remember, I think it was Penny Arcade did a comic on it where it was like telling somebody that the Wii weather app was actually a video game.
Aww.
Yeah, I think that it just shows Gabe where he's just kind of like it's raining in Singapore, and then Tycho's like, oh man, that's really bad. You might have to reset. But yeah, no, that would be delightful to do with with Excitebike. But no, did not know that. Did not experience that.
The more you know. So tell me about the crazy track you built.
Yeah, no. So the first thing that I did was I just went through, just to get a feel for it, was I just went through like A, B, C, and just like obstacles, because all of the obstacles are just given arbitrary letters, So I just went through and just did all of them in order to just get a feel for like what they all were. And then then basically it just became a series of those super ramps and cooldowns and all like in a line, so I didn't even really have to try. And then like this super big obstacles, so I could just like leap right over those. Oh yeah, no, I felt amazing. And then got bored and stopped doing it. But like,
yeah. But I mean, unless you're building something, you're gonna try and like save or share or like have somebody else, like you build an amazing track and they're like, okay, try and beat my time on this amazing track I built. Like, of course what you do is you build like the impossible.
Yeah,
this track only makes sense in a world where I have superpowers and don't fear death.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like with most games, like my life cycle with like modern games is play it for a while, enjoy that, then like kind of go online and see if there's any like fun weirdness, and then go online and see if there's a way to break the game entirely and like basically unlock God mode. And then you play that for a couple of hours and that immediately gets boring. And then you're just done with the game for a while, because I mean, and I always feel that that's like when it comes full circle for when you like you start off, you have respect for the designers and like all this amazing thing that they've made, and then like you get really frustrated on some minor glitches, and you really wonder why they don't let you just do this because it'd be super fun. And then like, but then when you break it and become God, you know, you're just kind of like, right, and now this is boring because there is no threat of death or no challenge. And no, I get it. We are brothers now again, and then you know, the cycle ends.
Well, if there's any Buddhists listening, I'm about to seriously piss them off. But
Sweet.
I feel like gods are a godlike thing as part of the reincarnation wheel, but they can't escape the reincarnation cycle. So like, even though they're all powerful, only humans can escape the reincarnation cycle by achieving enlightenment.
Yes, if I remember correctly, which means I probably don't.
As we've established.
Yeah. It's just to stay on theme, because I love how Excitebike became a theme about memory for some reason. But
yeah, I wonder. I'll bet people think we pick like weird quirks we're gonna attribute to each game, but we don't. This nonsense happens in real time.
Yep, it's just the general insanity of our lives. But no, if I remember correctly, you are correct. That only humans can attain enlightenment and get out of the wheel. But like becoming a god or deific character, person, thing, whatever is, and I'm not sure if it's actually a god. I think it's more like deity-esque, you know, like
like an angel.
Their equivalent of an angel, is like for a particularly good life led, you know, like that's the reward, is that you get to be an angel for a while, you know.
Sure.
But it's just not one that necessarily led you to enlightenment, you know. So
I mean that's nice. It's like you don't get to get off the carousel ride, but you get to be God for a while.
Yeah, it'd be kind of like, you know, like if you spent your entire life acquiring material possessions and then giving it all away to charities, you know, because you actually wanted those charities to do good. It's like, well, you did really, really good stuff. Kind of missed the point of like material possessions causing desire and want, and thus, you know, like you missed the boat on that, which is what would have led you to enlightenment. But you did a bunch of really good stuff, so we don't want to like negate that, you know. So
God mode enabled.
Yeah, so be a god for a little while, you know, jump around doing that, and then jam back over here. We'll put you in a human again, and you can try again.
So on the design thingy, I will give them ultimate props for having that level of like foresight at this stage in gaming history. Like for them to say, we are going to cut out some of our incredibly limited memory to build in like a track editor. And even though like, yeah, okay, the save mechanic didn't work in America and in Europe, haha. But like even shipping it broken, you could still use it when you were playing.
Yeah, you just couldn't turn it off.
Right. And building a track, even though the letter thing is absurdly stupid.
Yeah, that was pretty obnoxious.
But that I think that's just a limitation of the time. Like they had to put a huge amount of information on the screen at once. And It's not like they could have a bunch of collapsing menus. That would be nightmarish. So they give you the, you know, I think it's A through S.
Yeah, something like that.
There's like, I guess, what would that be, like 21 different obstacles or something. And then you know, you can build, and building is pretty good. You can't really go backwards, and if you accidentally like drive forward a little bit and then you want to change that last obstacle, it's like, too bad, you missed your opportunity.
Yep.
But overall, like it's actually pretty sophisticated even now, like alone for the time. But the fact that it's in there at all, I think showed like amazing foresight. Like, oh, eventually you're gonna just expect to be able to do stuff like this in games, so here's like a rudimentary version.
Yeah, and you would know more about this than I would, but I know that in a lot of games, like the reason why God mode and things like that exist is because basically the software developers use it to debug, you know, like to basically say like, hey, I don't want to deal with the game. I want to test like the specific thing. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me that they basically had this track editor and they're like, can we fit that on there? And it's like, yeah, we got to lobotomize it a little bit. And it's like, well, go for it, you know? I mean, putting developer tools in the player's hands is a very old-fashioned way to let people cheat.
I mean, God, in the original Sonic games, the cheat mode was literally called debug mode because that's what it was. It let you break the universe in fun and interesting ways, and man, I had a lot of fun doing that. But like nowadays, like there are entire genres of games. Like the creator mode in Minecraft is arguably just the debug mode for Minecraft. Like it's like, what if you had unlimited numbers of all the materials all the time? Also, you can fly. Like,
Yeah.
it takes all of the rules of Minecraft adventure mode and turns them off, and then lets you push the engine to its limits because you can do anything.
And then people built a full-size replica of the USS Starship Enterprise.
Yes, but I just think it's interesting that like something that used to be in games so that the designers could make sure the game was functioning correctly has essentially become its own genre of game.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I think that's fantastic and very interesting. And I think that certainly, if not the first, one of the first would be Excitebike or something like that, where they were just like, no, let's just leave this in and just see. I mean, it doesn't hurt us all.
Call it another mode.
Yeah, exactly. Just see what happens. And like I said, like that to me was the thing I remembered and loved the most about Excitebike. Was it as amazing as I remember it? No. Just because this was one of the first of its kind that I had experienced. So I was just kind of like, this is the best thing that anybody's ever done ever. I get to make the tracks. I write the stories, unlimited power. And now this time I was just kind of like, oh yeah, I can make like these like cool, awesome tracks that really kind of push how fast I should be going. And I got bored with it relatively quickly. But at the same point in time, it's still, okay. So like when people originally started, getting all into, Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, when the Lord of the Rings was coming out, right? I was just kind of like, I don't understand what the big deal with Tolkien is. He's basically...
I assume you mean the movies, since the books predate us by several decades.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I don't have a time-traveling Excitebike machine, so yeah, when the movies were coming out. Everybody was like super stoked about it, and I was only passingly familiar with it, and I was just like, what's the big deal? It's just basically D&D, and they were like, yeah, this came first. Like, D&D is based off of Tolkien's universe. I was like, oh... okay, now I see why everybody's so excited about it. So, like, this is kind of a similar experience where it's just kind of like knowing that this is one of the first of its kind. You have to remember that when you're doing it, because otherwise you'd be like, man, newer games, let me do like way more stuff. It's like, right, but this was one of the first ones that did it. So
yeah, but those exist because of this.
Exactly. And you're like, oh, well,
you like Minecraft, you have Excitebike to thank for it.
And there's the tagline. You like Minecraft? Thank Excitebike. But
and it does, I will just say, is one of the, like, if you want to give it more accolades, which why not?
Yeah.
It kind of is your makeshift 2-player mode, because it's like you build a track and then you have like your friend or your sibling play, right? And then they build a track and then you play. And because I mean, you could do handoffs on the regular single player game, but like it doesn't feel quite as collaborative. It just feels like I'll play single player, then you play single player, then I'll play single player again. But if one, which is how everybody played it.
Right. Yeah. But no, yeah. I think that you land on something amazing, which is that would be an example way, way earlier than most examples are cited of asymmetric gameplay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you're the DM, you build the track, right? And then the player drives the track.
Exactly. So two completely different experiences, but still, yeah. So, wow, that's kind of cool that, like, I wouldn't have said that that Excitebike was one of the pioneers of asymmetric gameplay, But there you have it.
Yeah, man. Some of these old games, like, they have I think they have a lot more to them than they typically get credit for, because there's so much opportunity to be shallow. Like, if you just look at the graphics and the music compared to modern graphics and modern music, it's like, well, yes, obviously technology has improved dramatically in the last 40 years of what we think of as modern gaming. And yes, the stuff from the 70s and 80s does not compare well to the stuff of the aughts and the teens and the 2000s. But I really don't think game design, by which I don't just mean video games, but like all of gaming, has had nearly as dramatic of it as an evolution. Like people 30 years ago still understood like game mechanics, and the technologies allowed new mechanics to be invented, but I don't think we discovered fun in like the last 20 or 30 years.
I think that for me, I would say that comparing old gaming to new gaming there's two things I think you have to take into account of. Is one, that a lot of what made some of the older games successful and some of the older games unsuccessful became canonized. So like there's some things that you see older games do that you never see anymore. And it's because it was awful and it made the game awful. And so we never do that anymore, and some things that are amazing that are like standards now, and so that kind of leads into the second thing, which is, to me, all modern games kind of have to say like they stand upon the shoulders of giants, So like one of the reasons why they're able to put so much like effort into like pushing the boundaries in this new area is because they don't have to worry about some of these like basic things that have been standardized, established, and that's just the way you do it because they tried all of the different ways and this way was considered the best. So unless that's the thing you're trying to change and push, you leave that as is, because you don't want to like overwhelm the player. Like one of the biggest ones I know Ocarina of Time did was like lock on targeting. I don't know if they pioneered that, but I think that they were one of the first. And now you see that all the time.
Yeah, if they weren't the first to do that, they are probably the most popular example.
Right. So now it's just kind of like,
yeah, and the implementations you see are all virtually identical to the implementation in Ocarina of Time. So not only did everybody crib that idea because it was a good idea, but it's not like they cribbed it and then improved it. It's like basically the original implementation is still the one we have now, like 15 years
It's like the
later.
wheel. People were like, yeah, maybe made out of rubber, maybe made out of wood, but we're not going to change that. That works.
Perfectly round. I like it.
So, yeah, what did you think? Did it hold up?
It does. It absolutely holds up. The only like asterisk on does it hold up is I didn't have as clear a memory about how short it is.
I would agree with that. Yes.
So it was kind of like when I was done playing, I was like, "Oh, there's okay. I guess I'm done now."
I guess I did all of it.
Yeah, and you can't play against other people, and I, like you, I made a ridiculous super track in the designer, and then I was like, okay, I get it, right? Because I wasn't designing those tracks for anyone else to play. You can't save them, so like that ran its course very quickly.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like I wish there was like more, like even if there were several tracks that were similar, so like maybe 10 tracks, but there isn't a huge amount of variation between them, but. I mean, memory limitations. There's a limit to how much stuff they could shove into those cartridges.
Yeah, no, I definitely would agree that it's way shorter than I remember, just mostly because I think that we were mostly doing the asymmetric gameplay of make the ridiculous track, drive the ridiculous track, and then making the ridiculous track takes, a while, so that's how you lose hours and hours and hours of this game as opposed to playing the pre-made ones, which, I mean, I think it generally takes about 2 minutes all said and done to go through a track. So that means you got 10 minutes of gameplay and then that's it. And then, it's going back. But that being said,
unless you're exclusively going for time, then you don't think about the fact that you're doing the same track over and over because that's your objective. Your objective is to do the same track over and over and do it faster.
And I actually did do that a little bit where because I played all of the tracks, I think like 3-4 times. And then, and I went back and did track 1 about like 10 times, just kind of get a feel for it and like start to memorize. And I did like feel that there was some degree of memorization, like that helps,
Sure.
But honestly, from my opinion, did it hold up? Yeah, I think that I enjoyed playing it. I would recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it as like a $60 game. I wouldn't say like, oh yeah, this is like Fallout 4, where it's just hours and hours of gameplay. And no, it's not that. But I mean, if you can get a hold of a copy for relatively cheap, then yeah, just throw some time at it. It's very straightforward, and I think very enjoyable.
Well, and the fact that all of the tracks, both modes and the designer, are available the second you turn the game on, that makes it a lot more like snackable.
Yeah.
Where you can just say like, okay, today I'm going to sit down and see if I can beat my best time on track 4. You don't have to do anything, right?
Yeah.
There's no save. There's no even like a code to input or anything. You just sit down, and if track 4 is the one you like and that's the one you think you can beat your record time on, like, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think snackable is a good way to describe this game, which is it's just like if you got 10 minutes and just want to play a game, it loads up super fast. It basically just loads up and says like, Excitebike, what do you want to play? And you go like, I want to play this mode, I want to play this track, and I want to see if I can beat my time. I got 15 minutes. I'm going to blow that doing that. I did it. I did do it. Whatever. Put it down. You're done. But
which,
yeah,
I mean, it makes sense that it's not a huge time sink of a game because, as we've established, you are driving a time machine.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player 2 there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile.